I'm very pleased to be joined by the number one YouTuber by subscribers with multiple millions following him there, and many going to places like a theater in California where he screened his own film, a fan film of Star Wars called Vader II, that has, I gotta say, some of the most incredible animation I have ever seen, and already just shy of 3 million views on YouTube. Star Wars Theory returns here on KOA. Theory, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
Great to talk with you, man. So, first of all, let's talk before we get into your movie, the fan film, and all of that. Talk to us a little bit about who you are, how you got into the YouTube world, and why Star Wars.
Who I am? Well, I'm just a simple man making my way through the universe. I'm just kind of like every other nerd out there, and started watching Star Wars back when I was about 5 or 6 years old in the mid '90s, where my parents introduced me to it. Sorry if my sound is going to be nasally. Like we discussed, I'm getting over a cold. It seems like everyone's got it. But yeah, back in the early sort of '90s, mid '90s, I started watching Star Wars and just fell absolutely in love with it. And since then, had spent most of my time just making comments on forums and stuff like that in my teenage years. And then, you kind of grow up and get into other things. And I got into different lines of work. And then I made a video on YouTube randomly one day in 2016 when I was 26 years old about Star Wars. I simply just had an idea, and I made a channel called Star Wars Theory, and I just made a video. I thought that Snoke was Palpatine. This was when the new sequels had just come out, and then I forgot about it, and I checked back, and there were a few hundred comments and views, and I thought this was so cool because it reminded me of my past of when I was a kid on forums, and that was how I made friends. And so I just kept going, and here we are 10 years later. So
yeah, you have 3.36 million subscribers, but that, of course, is a number that says so much as people over time have been following you and so forth. But what really I think stands out is when you foster a community, a following of other fans, in this case of Star Wars, like you, who will show up to a premiere of your own movie where you rent out several theaters to screen it, to show up at fan conventions all around the country, like you've been to a couple here in Denver, or other things where they will make a trek to go see you in person in addition to watching your content online. And one thing that's so fascinating is that this YouTube world has really brought about more and more of this. When you look big picture at where things are at right now online with those kinds of mediums, and especially with the following that you've built up, how do you look at the industry right now?
I look at the industry just how George Lucas looked at it, which was get out of Hollywood, do your own thing, make your own thing. Don't have a boardroom of these executives telling you what to do with your creative decisions. And I think we can see that a lot today with the success of films like Obsession, which came from a YouTuber, or Backrooms, which came from a YouTuber, or any other medium where you have total control. And I think George Lucas really set the mark on that one and broke the mold, where he really was a pioneer of independent filmmaking. And I think today that is more needed than ever.
Talk to us about Vader II. It's the sequel to a fan film you made, 8 years ago? And now finally brought about the second part. You've had some trials and tribulations with getting your team together that you wanted to make this happen. And then I have to tell you, I was blown away by the quality of the animation, going, why in the world is a company like Disney not bringing this sort of thing out? So talk to us about your project. Then maybe we'll get to the Disney.
We can segue, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I wrote this idea about 8 years ago, and I had this a vision for Vader fighting Mace Windu, but it was so much more than that because, sure, everyone loves a cool fight scene, and we see tons of fan films about those. But who doesn't like cool lightsaber fights? But there's so much more to unpack with Vader and Mace. So you have two characters that hate each other equally and have always had this disdain for each other. But how does that play into, if now Mace is coming back, Vader's arc? How do we see this young Vader? Because that's what this story is. It's not an old, grizzled, dark Vader like we've seen. It's a young Vader. 8 months after Revenge of the Sith, he's still battling with his demons of his dead wife and how to bring her back. He's still battling with who he once was and his betrayal of the Jedi and his friends. Is this the life he really wants to walk? And who is going to make him question that the most? It's Mace Windu. So I think, bringing them together at the catacombs where his dead wife is buried, which eventually will lead to her tomb, her sarcophagus, I think it's going to bring around a lot of emotions for Vader that we can really explore and have fun with and see how is he going to deal with all of these trials and tribulations.
What was involved in the production of this film, including on the financial side, because Disney doesn't allow YouTubers, especially you, and you can even talk about why if you want to, but to make money off of these products. So you put this project together. It's a passion project that you had to self-fund. What was involved in that whole process?
Basically my sanity. I mean, any filmmaker will tell you of all of the, hoops that they've had to jump through to get their project done, and this was no different. Especially as a kind of a first timer, I don't have a massive team telling me, hey, we should do this, we should do that, or investors. So I essentially had to sell a lot of different things to get the funds going, and while growing Theory Sabers and paying for my entire team for that and growing that to the scale that it's gotten to today, and making the film at the same time while running into so many problems and issues and having to do revisions, which is just time and money because you have to pay the artists and learn from your mistakes. So it was definitely quite the undertaking for many years and took a toll for sure, but I'm very happy with the final product, and I think the fandom is too.
Yeah, when you are working on this and turning your vision into reality, and you're able to do that, how is that for you as a creator who has done all kinds of theory videos? You've done live streams. You've done videos about the movies and breaking things down for TV shows and whatnot. And then here is a creation within the universe of Star Wars, but it is yours. It's a Star Wars theory production.
Yeah. I could have done kind of the the smart thing and just continued to make fan fictions and, made my money off YouTube and not put myself in debt or have to take out loans and lines of credit and all that. But to me, that's just not fun. As funny as that sounds, I like to create. Being a YouTuber, I like to make things. I like to create. I have a vision, and I want to see that on screen. And above all, I want to inspire. I want people to watch something I create and to get a kick out of it or get an emotion out of it. And to hopefully make something that resonates with the fandom and gives them hope and excitement, and to show them that anyone can make anything you want. You don't have to be some major Hollywood, executive. So that was really kind of my passion behind this, to create something.
From that creativity, one of the ways that you were able to self-fund this project is through your company Theory Sabers, where you have these custom lightsabers that are, there are a number of companies out there that do this. And if you go to any kind of like Fan Expo, Denver, or Comic-Con, you'll see them. But you had a specific desire over several years, and a few years ago finally launched the company and have sort of self-funded. For a moment, let's detour. Talk to us about Theory Sabers and building up that company.
Oh, I mean, that is my biggest passion to date. That's something I wake up every morning with a spring in my step to work on this company and all the amazing people that I get to work with that are part of it, from our affiliates to all of our employees and all of our workers behind the scenes. And to be able to collaborate with Roger Christian, the man who created the first lightsaber with George Lucas, which we're releasing his 50th anniversary saber pretty soon, to Nick Gillard, the choreographer behind the entire prequel trilogy, who's a dear friend of mine who I'll be seeing next month, or actually in a few weeks at the Lucas Museum, to TC Carson and so many other big names out there. We really pride ourselves on creating something totally different from everyone else and making something for fans by fans. And I'm so happy to be able to be in this space. It's something I've always wanted to do.
You mentioned TC Carson,
Hmm.
and I have to go to him for a moment because you actually arranged for him to voice Mace Windu. TC Carson has been the animated and I think video game voice for Mace Windu for decades now.
Hmm.
Talk to us about that and getting to actually have in your fan-made production the voice of Mace Windu outside of Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna do it, you got to bring in the man himself. And TC, I mean, he lent his voice for this project, and he did a phenomenal job. We've recorded, obviously, episode 2, but we've also done episode 3. So we've recorded all of his lines for that. And let me just say, like, you guys saw a couple lines for the second one, but there are a lot in the third where he really exercises his vocal range. And for those of people who don't know, he was also the OG Kratos in God of War 1 to 3. So you know that he brought a little bit of Kratos to this as well, especially near the end of 3.
So when it comes to the creations of all of this, I mean, we'll get to AI in a moment too, but you have a growth of fan-created content. A lot of it, like yours, doesn't have AI at all. Some of it has AI. But it's almost like there's a vacuum or a feeling of a vacuum of good quality Star Wars content and other franchises as well that the companies themselves, like Disney, which owns Lucasfilm, aren't producing, or others. And so fans have taken it upon themselves to make these creations that go into such depth and detail like your Vader II and others do. What do you think it is about this moment, especially with the internet being as it is, that has driven so much fan creativity and that has almost felt for some like there's a need to create because it's not there from the actual companies?
Yeah, and I think the fans are doing a really great job with that. I think the problem is a lot of the creatives at Lucasfilm aren't necessarily as in charge as we would like them to be, or maybe some of them are just the wrong fit. And I think too many cooks are in the kitchen over there. So we need to let the creatives and the passionate people who really understand George's story and characters to lead with the writing and the directing, and let the boardroom executives and whoever else is pushing the pencils over there to just kind of be silent and do their thing behind the scenes. But the story is what will drive all of the views, all of the ticket sales. And so if the story is lacking, then you're really putting yourself in a bind in so many different ways. And that's why we see that today with Disney and the products they're making. And that's why the fans are able to create such a creative spin on what we've wanted for so long that resonates with the fans because it's by fans for fans. And that's really what I think the new Lucasfilm under Disney has missed, and the need to bring that back.
Do you think that Hollywood has just gotten so far out of touch from their fandoms? Have they been straying too far into politics and trying to bring some of those world viewpoints more into their products than they did in the past? What do you think is the underlying problem here that has gone astray or awry in Hollywood?
I think they're just thinking about it too much. I think they're really focused on money and quarter earnings and returns and all of these things that really don't drive why people go to the movies in the first place. George just wanted to tell a good story, and if you look at any great franchise, it is just about telling a fantastic story. Transformers, for example. I can connect with Optimus Prime. He's not human. I don't care what he is. It's about the story and the soul of the character. And I think that Hollywood has forgotten that, and they need to go back to focusing on the hero's journey in whatever capacity. I frankly don't care the skin color of the character, the gender of the character, the sexual orientation of the character. I only care if the character is written well. And I think a lot of us can really connect with that through a well-written story. And I think Hollywood is missing the mark on that by focusing too much on money or perhaps optics. They need to go back to storytelling.
We're talking with Star Wars Theory here on KOA, and that storytelling aspect. I think there's something so enriching for all of human history about telling stories. I was not long ago in Utah, Canyonlands National Park, in this area where you have an amazing array of, well, canyons, and it's just this massive, it just keeps going and going and going. But they have some of these cave dwelling kind of markers on walls in a couple of spots in that area. And looking at them, you can just tell they're telling a story. It's hard to tell exactly what that story is now, thousands of years later. But to them, it really meant something. To us now, we can see something like Vader II, a creation of someone like you, Star Wars Theory, a fan who's gone into this YouTube realm, and you're doing the same tradition.
Yeah. No, storytelling has been part of our very DNA for thousands of years, and it's the way we can inspire each other, whether it be the youth or the old. And I think storytelling is extremely vital to our humanity, our civilization, our evolution, and our ability to be inspired, to just live our life to our greatest ability possible by the characters that we really want to embody and watch. And so whether that's a cave painting of, someone overcoming a bunch of saber-toothed tigers, or it's Vader 2, or it's Superman, or whatever it might be. All of these stories are meant to inspire us as humans and to help us push to new heights in our life.
Let's talk about your premiere a couple of weeks ago, where you actually rented out multiple theaters to screen your film. And we saw, I watched some of the videos that you put out with fans that attended and so forth. People came from all around the country just to be there for a movie that was 21 minutes long. It's not a full-length feature film, although it has a lot in it for that 21 minutes for sure. But talk to us about that premiere, how the attendance was, and what that sends you in terms of a message about the people that are part of a community that you've built through your content.
Well, first and foremost, community is everything. They're the reason why I'm still here after 10 years on YouTube, which is something that not a lot of people can say, and I owe it to them. So in a lot of ways, this is for them. There were people lining up at 4 a.m, which is insane in the California sun and in summertime. And I'm so thankful that I've been able to be part of this amazing community over this time. I mean, over almost more than 30 years now, and I've seen all different facets and shapes of the Star Wars community. And I have to say that one thing always remains true. It's that our love for what George Lucas created is prevalent, and it's very real. And so to all the people that came out, I think it just speaks to what George created, and I'm just one fan that's trying to continue on the line that he wrote and on the characters that he wrote and expand on that.
And to be clear, Star Wars Theory, you did not sell tickets to this thing.
No tickets were sold. So it was a free event. I spent over $9,000 just on popcorn alone for people to come out and have some free food and drinks. And to me, that it's great to be in a position to be able to do that. But again, it's all because of them. So the fact that no tickets were sold, I didn't know what to expect. I thought maybe, might get 100 people, but we did 10x that, and we had to double the showings. We had 4 showings originally, and then we had to open it up to 5, and then we had it running 2 theaters at the same time, essentially, with about 20 minutes apart. So it was roughly about 10 showings to fit 1,000 people.
Wow, that is quite an undertaking, talking with Star Wars Theory here on KOA. And I want to ask you, I mentioned AI. Now, of course, artificial intelligence is taking so many industries by storm. On the one hand, I've seen you review AI-created fan videos that are really detailed, that are extremely impressive in their own right, kind of a little scary sometimes when you see some of what's created. But then you're also stressing that your work product with the team that you assembled is 100% not AI at all, and the quality is literally as top-notch animation as you're going to find anywhere. Talk to us a little bit about how you view the AI of it all in terms of both online content and where Hollywood might be headed.
Well, I think Hollywood is all about making money. So I think we've already seen them incorporating AI in everything they do, and probably in ways that we won't know behind the scenes. George Lucas spoke about AI recently. He said it's just another tool. He said it's just like, when the combustion engine came out with vehicles and we were all using horses and chariots. He said, it's inevitable. There's nothing you can do to change it. Now, that being said, I don't endorse AI for major productions where it would steal a worker's job. And that's why we used real artists the entire way through for Vader Episode II. And when it comes to a YouTuber, like some of the videos I've reacted to, where they're just making some AI Star Wars stuff, I find it entertaining, but in no means should it replace an artist's work. And that's why I've put myself in so much debt to hire and work with real artists around the world who have been working on the films that we see in theaters today. And that's why the fidelity is so high with Vader 2, because it's real workers, real artists, real talent.
Do you think AI is going to be essentially taking over entertainment, or is it going to be viewed as a tool, like George Lucas said, to be worked in this way or that way? Sort of like what he did with green screen technology back in the day, or with linear editing, which was invented by George Lucas and now used today by YouTubers and Hollywood alike to create videos using computers. That's George Lucas. So is AI just going to end up being another tool like that, like he put it?
I think with any tool, you can use it in the light side or the dark side. So I think when it comes to AI, you can definitely create an entire thing without actors or artists. And I think you can also use it to speed up or save on VFX. So for example, if you have me speaking to you, you could use AI to change my shirt, to change my entire wardrobe, to change the background. In those cases, I think it's just like VFX. It's just like, using Photoshop compared to when we didn't have it. But if you're going to replace the work of an actual artist, I think there's some issue there. And the artist, if they're being used or their work or likeness is being used, they should be compensated fairly.
Talking with Star Wars Theory. So let me ask you, from the YouTube world, of course, you have the fandoms, you have all these different groups of people that come together, and they're looking, we talked about storytelling, they're looking for good stories, they're looking for characters that they can relate to and connect with because of the story, because of the struggles and the things that they're going through. When you look at Disney Star Wars and where things are at right now, this weekend as we're recording this, you have D23 where they'll have some previews and revelations about the Ahsoka TV show, about the Starfighter movie due out next year, and so forth. Do you look positively at where things are at with now Dave Filoni, an apprentice of George Lucas, in charge of Lucasfilm? Or are you still a little jaded based on things that have been not so great over the past several years?
I think I would be a fool to say I'm not jaded, after certain projects that came out that I had a major issue with that really derailed what George created. But I'm always hopeful, and I always kind of take the one thing that George left us with was to always have hope and to never let the Empire fully take that away from us. So for me, I'm always very, very positive, and I like to believe that things will be turned around. The proof is in the pudding, so we'll have to wait and see if that's going to happen.
When you look at the legacy of George Lucas, he gets a bad rap from a lot of people for reasons that make me scratch my head. Same thing for you. I think a lot of it goes to the prequels and how people have some of their views of the prequels, but I mentioned a lot of the ways in which he changed and revolutionized filmmaking, including the digital space and what we have seen through digital characters and so forth, and linear editing and all the rest. How do you view Lucas's legacy yourself as a Star Wars fan, Star Wars Theory? And how do you think how do you approach the criticisms of George Lucas, whether they're in good faith or bad faith?
I think criticism is really important. So I'll right off the bat say that. I think if we live in a world where everyone just agrees with everyone, no one's going to evolve. Because criticism, even if you disagree with it, it'll lead you to a different thought. And you'll be like, well, I disagree with what they're saying, but actually maybe I could improve on this, or maybe this could be changed, or what if I did change that? And it can always lead you to a better outcome. There's nothing wrong with that. Some criticism obviously is unwarranted and in bad faith, but we don't really worry about those. So I think, as someone who's been defending George since he was a little kid, again, when the prequels came out against all of those people, I think that criticism is really important, but at the same time, you shouldn't take it at such face value. You should be definitely steadfast in your route and the angle that you want to take and the vision that you have, and really focus on that while still being cognizant of what you could improve, because you can always be better. Everyone can always improve. So I think George did a great job with taking that criticism and continuing on with the story that he wanted to tell. And I wish more of Hollywood would do that instead of bending and creating something that just doesn't really resonate with people.
Now, one of the things you mentioned in terms of criticism, and we'll go the bad faith tends to be, is you can get labels like I've gotten racist, sexist, bigot for things that make absolutely no sense. You're like, did you even watch the content? Do you know what you're talking about, or just hearing what somebody else has said about me and then interpreting that? And in this heated political climate, we see that more and more, whether you're in the United States, where you're in Canada, where you're from, it's happening seemingly across the board. What do you make of this moment in that regard? And how do you look at that kind of an attack against you?
I look at it as someone who is coming from a place of fear. And I've been called everything in the book online. But at the end of the day, I always make my opinions pretty straightforward, that if I didn't like something, it was simply because of the story, it was poorly written. And I think it's a really weak argument when people want to completely detract from your points of lack of storytelling or what it might be, and just position you into some sort of a box or a political box of what they think you are or who they think you are. And I have a real problem with that. And so I think that can do a lot of damage to someone, because at the end of the day, you should be looking at what someone says at face value. Not, oh, well, if they didn't like this show, it must be because there is a person of color as the main character. Therefore, they didn't like it because of the actor, and then therefore they must be racist. I think that is so weird. And I find that really common online today. And I hope it changes. I hope people are able to take what you say and look at that and say, okay, well, you know what? Maybe he just didn't like the show and it has nothing to do with anything else, and not lead from a place of fear or anger of some of the actual terrible things that are out there, for sure.
Just a few minutes left with our guest YouTuber, Star Wars Theory, and film creator, Star Wars Theory. Should really stress that when it comes to Vader Episode II and the creation. I have to tell you, I watched it last night with my fiance and her 13-year-old son, and he said, and I quote, "This feels like something George Lucas would approve of."
Oh, good.
Now, that's the age range that Lucas always said he really thought Star Wars was meant for, saying he felt that Lucas would approve of this. So kudos to you there, Theory.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And that's exactly what Roger Christian told me, too, which meant a lot. So I'm happy.
Again, the original creator of the lightsaber, Roger Christian. So when we look ahead for Vader Episode III, it took you several years to come out with Episode II.
Yeah.
And you can see the quality of the work that came about after so long. How long do you think it's going to take you to get out the third one? And what are you looking at, or what can we anticipate for that next episode?
I think it should take 3 years. I'm hoping. I don't think it'll take what it took to make to make Episode 2, which was 7 years. And this next one will be extremely intense. So we're bringing on Nick Gillard to do all of the choreography, because Vader has to go up against all of those Jedi at the same time. And so if you want to match the choreography from the prequel trilogy with all of those amazing fights with Maul, Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Anakin, you have to bring in the man himself. And well, that's exactly what we're doing. So it's going to be very intense, very action-packed, and it's going to really tell the story of a young Vader coming into the Vader that we know from A New Hope.
Why is Vader and Anakin Skywalker, the pre-Vader and post-Vader incarnation, such a fascinating character to you? What is it about his story that gets you going, you know what, I really want this to be the subject of my fan film?
I think Vader is the most interesting story in all of fiction. I think Anakin Skywalker has the most tumultuous journey, and I think it's something that we can all really connect with, because you have this guy who started out as this wide-eyed boy who had the best intentions to come back and free his mom and free the slaves and all of his friends, and to go off and become this space wizard, this Jedi. And he falls from grace. It was his inability to curb his control and his need for power that allowed him to make a desperate deal with the devil and lead him down a path that he did not want, but ultimately made. And through all of these decisions, he was able to finally turn around in the very end on his last breath because of his son, catalyzing the fact that he knew what was right in the end. And he knew that he says, your sister was right. And so it shows us all of the decisions that we make in life lead to a certain path. And that is reflected in what Luke saw when he chopped off his father's hand and looked back at his robotic hand. And it shows us that no matter what we do, how far along this path we've gone that we didn't want to go down, we can always make a change. We can always change it around and become better. And I think that is the story of Anakin.
And isn't that the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy, the timeless lessons of the stories that are being told that made Star Wars so resonant with so many people versus, say, some of the Disney content that we're getting that sometimes it may seem to be putting in a contemporary political agenda or some other approach that doesn't look at that lens that made Star Wars so appealing?
Yeah, and I think that they really need to start focusing less on politics or whatever else they're trying to focus on, and really just bring it back to storytelling and let that shine through. Yeah. And I guarantee you that people will be absolutely in love with the stories that they tell. If they just go back, 90s Disney stories were awesome. I loved them. The movies, they were just fun. They were good. They had good messages. And that was it. Today, it's different. And I just hope we go back to that.
I want to ask you as we wrap up here, just a couple final things. One, you are a Canadian citizen, but you've been spending a lot of time in the United States. You've talked about moving to the United States. Mm-hmm. You've expressed frustrations about things that have been happening in Canada. Mm-hmm. Talk to me for a moment about sort of how you're looking at, from the growth of your company, Theory Sabers, I think your warehouse for the companies in Florida. You have these different opportunities. Minnesota now. Okay, yeah, Minnesota. Yeah. There you go.
Expanded.
So let's talk about that for a moment and how you view what's going on in Canada for us Americans here.
Well, Canada is a beautiful place. I have lived here my whole life. I was born here, and it's home. But sometimes you have to spread your wings and go to a place that has much more opportunity, and I feel is a little more fair. And I think for me that is the United States. I don't know which state yet I'm going to land on. But, I do like California a lot. I do like Florida a lot. I do like Texas. So really, I'm still kind of deciding. Our warehouse is in Minnesota. And so for me, I think the opportunities to grow the business and to just make content and connections and all my friends who are out there would be so much easier for me and streamlined if I just moved to the States. So thinking of dual citizenship or whatever. We'll see what happens. Next few years.
A little more freedom of speech here in the United States these days too, it seems.
A little more freedom of speech, I would agree, and I think easier on taxes, depending on the state, for sure. Absolutely, yeah.
That compared to Canada, although I would say cost of living and taxes in California might make that a little bit prohibitive in consideration.
I would even argue that British Columbia is probably just as bad, if not worse.
Yeah, I could believe that.
Yeah.
I could believe that for sure.
Yeah.
So as you look ahead, you got Vader Episode III. You've got more productions that you're putting out as far as your lightsabers with Saber Theory Sabers and so forth. What can we expect from Star Wars Theory, and how do you view your place in the broader ecosystem of online content? Because whether you are, say, in Denver radio or print, or you're on YouTube or wherever, there's all these ecosystems and everybody's got their role. Where do you see you?
I think I'm just another drop on a windshield, to be honest, in a rainstorm. And I think at the end of the day, all of us get together and we create an ocean. So I think every single person and their opinion is important. I think every criticism is important. And as I've grown in life, I've realized that criticism is actually a really good thing, and it really leads you to a better outcome. So to that, I say every single individual creator is really important in creating what they want and going out and flexing that freedom and that creativity online and seeing, what people say. And I think we as humans are here to create things. So for me, whether that be my fan films or major motion pictures one day, which is my goal to be a director and writer, or my book that I'm creating, which is a fantasy fiction novel. It's a trilogy. And so that'll be out pretty soon. I'm almost done the first book.
Fantastic. And a great way to end our conversation. Star Wars Theory, subscribe on YouTube and check out Vader Episode II. Nearly 3 million views already. Always great to talk with you, sir. Thanks for returning to KOA.
Thank you so much.